Good morning, good afternoon and good evening. I am Saskia, aka Sassy Colouring, and I am here with a completely different type of video for you today. In this video we're going to journey into the world of drawing for beginners, and you will need one or two things to travel this journey with me. The first thing being a pencil, whatever type you want. A normal pencil, I'm going to use a mechanical pencil. The next thing is some type of liner, as in a black pen, or there are so many available out there, but we'll have a bit more about that later. An eraser of some description, and then something circular. I'm going to use an old CD because it's all scratched, but it's something around the same size as a CD, but circular, that you can draw around. So my goal today is to show you a really simple way to create a nice illustration that you can use in your crafting, in your journaling, all different things like that. I hear an awful lot of people say, oh, I can't draw, I can't even draw stick man. I guarantee you, if you just follow some very, very simple steps, you'll have a beautiful illustration that you can be really proud of at the end of it. So as you can see, I've drawn around the CD, and I drew around the hole in the middle just to give me an idea of where the centre of the circle is. Now, if you don't have something circular to draw around, you can always go freehand, but when you draw in the circle, try not to draw from your wrist, but draw from your elbow, so that you've got a really nice kind of circular motion going on. We're going to draw 3 circles, one large, one kind of middle-sized, and then one a little smaller. It doesn't matter if they overlap a small bit, but try and give them their own space for now, especially if you're just learning and you're just starting out drawing. Give them their own space so that you're giving yourself the best chance to get a really nice illustration. We're going to do the same down the bottom. Do one large circle, one middle-sized, and then one, well, you can do it the same size if you want, to each side of the big one. Okay, so carrying on with our circles, we're going to draw a circle in the middle. Doesn't have to be perfect, but roughly central in each of the bigger circles. So each circle gets a smaller inner circle. So I'm sure you can tell that each one of our circles is going to be an individual flower. Now what we're going to do is draw some straight lines and divide out each circle into 5 different segments. Each segment is going to hold a petal. So I normally draw 1 straight up, 2 slightly angled, and then 2 pointing down. So while each circle is going to be cut into these 5 segments, where you place the lines is up to you. It's definitely the circle placement in the center, and these line placements is going to really map out where your flower is going to go and evolve to. So for example, if we were going to take, say, our outer circle, and then we give a really big inner circle, we could divide it the exact same way with the exact same 5 lines, giving us these 5 segments. But your petals are going to be a lot smaller and rounder. So it's going to look very different to what we want our flowers to look like, where we've gone with a smaller center. So just remember that drawing the different size centers can give you a very different looking flower. So we're moving on to our petals. The shape we're aiming for here is kind of a loop rather than a semicircle. So we've got a rough guide of what our segment looks like, and this is how you want to shape your petal. Now remembering that this is a very, very beginner kind of flower, it's a very cartoony type of flower, and there are so many different ways to draw your petals, but for now we're going to focus on drawing them all the same and keeping the petals like this, just because I want to keep in mind that many of you have told me so many times that you're unable to draw even the simplest of things. So I'm out to prove you wrong today. Now, as I said, some of your flowers and your petals may overlap, and that's fine. I would still say draw the petal the same as you would any other petal, and when it comes to inking, that's when we can kind of focus on which petal we want to be more predominant. So exactly the same with the bottom 3 flowers, we're going to put in our 5 lines. So our flower has 5 segments, and then each segment gets 1 petal. So just for today, I want you to try and focus on trying to make the petals a bit more uniform. Now when you go into more advanced drawing, you don't want any petals to look the same. You want them to all look completely different, and the way that they fit the flower is going to be different. But for the look of this page, we're going to try and get each one nice and uniform, kind of the same style, where we don't want the petal to go outside the outer circle, which will keep them all roughly the same size. Okay, so we've got the very basic shape of our flowers, and we're going to move on to drawing our leaves. So I want you to draw a rectangle, and I want to cut it in half horizontally. Then a semicircle from one point to the other on the top, and the same underneath. And you've got a leaf. So as we know, leaves come in all different shapes and sizes, and we're going to use the exact same method, but what we're going to do is we're going to offset our center point. So we'll go up to this point and then back down. Same on the other side, down there and back up to the horizontal line. And you've got a more realistic looking leaf. It's like an elongated teardrop, that's what I'm going to say. So when you're drawing, you want to find methods that can help you recreate something. So by putting in these rectangles and using the rectangles to make the leaves, you're doing a few different things. One, you're getting used to using the pencil, getting used to what pressure you want. Because although my drawing is quite dark, if you were going to start drawing, you should be using a nice light pencil so that when we erase the pencil lines, you can't see them. I know when we erase these lines, we're going to be able to see them because I'm drawing quite heavy so that you can see. 2, the repetition of drawing of the same type of flower and the same type of leaf is going to give you muscle memory. So if you draw this rectangle and you put the same type of leaf in it 50 times, your body then realizes where you want the shape of the leaf to be without the rectangle. The same with the flowers. I still though, even when I'm drawing flowers that I want to look like this kind of cartoony style, I still do the outer circle and the inner circle and divide it into 5 because it's just a nice easy way to make sure you get a quite uniform flower every single time. So having put in our rectangles so that we know where we want them to go, we're going to use the second style of leaf just to give it that little bit more realistic look. And when I say realistic, I know that this is still a very cartoony page, but that's the style of leaf that we're going to go with for today. Okay, so you can see that some of the rectangles have started behind the petal. So if you imagine that the rectangle is hidden underneath that petal, and then when you draw in the leaf, it's also going to start underneath the petal. So you don't want to have a flower, unless that's the look you're going for, of course. You don't want to have a flower and then the leaf kind of slightly outside of it so it doesn't look attached. When we draw them together, we want to make them look like one image so that the leaf is coming out from underneath these lovely flowers that we're creating. Okay, so that's the bulk of our drawing finished, which is an illustration in itself. If you were doing a journal and you wanted to write in the center, this would be a lovely place to do it. But to make this stand out, what we want to do is outline our drawing. As I said before, there are hundreds of different brands, different styles, different thicknesses, all kinds of outliners, or as they're better known, fine liners. They range from the very inexpensive to very, very expensive. But what I want you to look for is one when you draw a straight line with your pen, which this is a Bic pen, just a normal Bic pen, is it giving you a continuous flow of ink? Or do you have to go over and over it to get a nice line? Can you see the line well on your first run over with the pen? Now some of these haven't been used for a while, so you might have to do 1 or 2 runs to get the ink flowing again. But you can see the difference between the Bic pen and the last pen that I used. I have 2 or 3 different brands that I turn to when I am doing my fine lining. This is an Amazon brand, and as you can see, it comes 10 different fine liners, and they come in all different thicknesses from the very, very thin up to this 1.2, which is very, very thick, which I'm going to use today just to outline, just so you can see what I'm doing. So the outer edges will be the 1.2, and then inner edges or detail, anything smaller, I'm going to go with the 0.3, which I think is a uni pin. So when it comes to outlining, what I'd like to say is confidence is key. So when you draw your lines, you want to have a start point and an end point, and one motion completes your section. So if you're drawing the circle or the petal from start to finish, one motion. The more nervous you are and the slower you do it, the more chance there is of making a mistake, or the lines looking a bit jittery, they look a bit kind of rougher. This is definitely something that takes time, it takes practice to try and get a really nice inked line. And I definitely, even after doing numerous amounts of books, still sometimes make a mistake and the line looks too wobbly, too jittery like I said, or it just doesn't turn out like I want it to. But that's where I remind myself that no 2 flowers ever look the same, no petal is ever the same shape as another petal, and nothing is ever perfect. So if you strive for perfection, you're always going to fall short. So just enjoy the process, enjoy the practicing, and learn from what you're doing. I also have been doing most of my drawing digitally the last maybe 8 months, and I found that when I came back to drawing with a pencil and a fine liner, I kind of lost my confidence almost with it, and so my lines are definitely not what they should be or what they used to be. So it's something that if you don't continue practicing, no matter how good you think you are, if you don't continue practicing, it's definitely something that you can kind of lose touch with. Now, as you can see, we got to the flower where the petals were kind of overlaid, and I chose to have the middle petal in full, and then the second petal I drew up into the line and then finished the petal off the other side, so it looks like it's underneath that petal. So the pencil mark doesn't matter, it's when you come in with the fine liner and ink the lines in, that's when you're going to see your drawing really take shape. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the outline. Now what we want to do is add a tiny bit of detail. Nothing too exciting, nothing too difficult, just to make them kind of more interesting to look at, we'll say. For that, we're going to move down to the 0.3, which is a much smaller nib. And what that's going to do is going to give us some variation in the line thickness, so that the picture looks a bit more 3D, I'm going to say, but more kind of interactive rather than one monochrome line kind of doing all. It also means that when you do things like these small circles in the center of the flower, that you can get them a little bit smaller, so it just makes your illustration just a little bit more interesting. And again, all we've done is use slight flicks, small, like 2 per petal, 1 on some, 3 on others, kind of mix it up every now and again, some really small straight lines on the leaves, and it just makes it that little bit more pleasing, not nicer, pleasing to look at. So again, when you're drawing these straight lines on the leaves, there is no right or wrong way to do it, remembering that these are not realistic leaves. You can draw them however you want to. But confidence again, once you start the line, follow it through. If you want to draw it in pencil first, do that as well. If you want to be an absolute rebel and go straight in with a pen, then go for it. Now when I say that there is nothing here that you can't draw, we all know that sometimes it looks really easy, but it is a bit difficult. My camera wants to focus on the pen rather than the drawing. But even a circle can be a bit challenging to get it to look like a circle. If you haven't drawn for a long time or you're not used to drawing, your circle could be a bit, I don't want to say scruffy, but a bit uneven. So what is the best way to learn how to do it? There are many tips and tricks that I could give you, but the best one is going to be get a blank sheet of paper and fill it with circles. When you start, make sure your end point hits back at your start point. Even overshoot it so it's a bit of a spiral. It doesn't have to be one line, it can be many circles to give you the good outline, because remember, when you go back with your fine liner, you choose the one you want to outline. Our illustration is really starting to take shape now. So what we're going to do next is erase the pencil lines. Just as there are 100 different brands of pens, there are 100 different brands of eraser. What you want to do is make sure that your brand of eraser works with your brand of pen. So on a different sheet, put some lines down, maybe give them a minute to dry, and then use your eraser on top and see, do they smudge? So purposefully, I didn't let this line dry, just so you can see the kind of flicks or tails that come off some fine liners with certain erasers. They'll all work different ways with each other. It's just about finding what you enjoy using and what works best for you as the artist you're evolving into. So I'm going to show you two different types of erasers. The first one I got for about 40 cents. Conversion wise, in pounds that would be a few pence less, and in dollars that would be a few cents more. But it's roughly around the same, pennies difference. Now what you can see with this is that there's a lot of dust that comes off the eraser. And it doesn't look like it would make much of a mess, but believe me, when you're doing 4 or 5 pages at a time, it gets messy. The second half, I'm going to show you my personal choice for an eraser, which is a putty eraser. They're not only great for erasing pencil lines, but when you're done, they're kind of dust free, so there's none of these little bits hanging around. And then, if you're anything like me, you have hours of fun kind of kneading them back into a different shape, or you kind of knead them and then they're brand new all over again. They're just magical little creations. The one that I'm using here is a Derwent brand. I got it in one of my monthly art subscription boxes and I'm trying to make friends with it, but it's not as good as some of my other ones. So again, it doesn't matter with price, it doesn't matter with brand, you've just got to find the ones that work well for you. Okay, so we've finished our flowers on our leaves, but to complete this illustration and turn it into something that you could use, say in your journal or even as a colouring page, we're going to add something else in the 2 gaps to complete the circle. So because we want our flowers and the leaves to be the focus, we want to keep the 2 items that are going to fill the gaps relatively simple, so that your eye is immediately drawn to the flower and the leaves rather than these 2 spaces. So I'm going to use the outline of the circle and I'm going to freehand some small leaves going kind of like a vine on both spaces. If you feel confident enough to freehand the leaves, then go for it. But if not, remember that you could also use the rectangle, split it in half, and then draw the leaves in, just make them a lot smaller. So I'm going to use the 1.2 fine liner, but rather than drawing directly over the line, I'm going to make it slightly more jagged, because if you see a tree branch, it's never going to have a perfect curve. So in one line, as I follow it, I'm just going to kind of give it a bit of a wobble on the way down, just to make it just a little bit more interesting. And then just outlining the leaves in the same way that we've done everything else. So once you've finished doing your outlining, what I normally do is stand back or take a step back, not literally, figuratively, and have a look to see if there's anything that I feel is missing. Does the illustration look complete? Does it look like it needs something else? And if it does, go back in with your pencil and add a few different things. When it's done with pencil, you can always erase them. So like with these now, the leaves looked a bit bare. So I've gone in and put the kind of middle line into them, and that I think looks better. But if I didn't like it, you can always just rub it out and see if something else would work. A really nice addition to this kind of illustration is a few small circles. It kind of is a space filler, but it also looks really pretty. Sometimes you can join them to the flower to make them look like berries, but for this illustration, we're just going to put a few circles here and there. Nothing interesting or difficult, just the circles. And we're going to outline these, the lines for the leaves and the circles, in the 0.3. My reasoning for this is that they just don't stand out then as much as the flowers. If you want to make them that bit darker, then go ahead. But for me, I want them to kind of be a backup to the flowers, not compete with them. So I've left this illustration in real time. So in reality, I would probably be a little bit quicker because I wouldn't focus so much on making sure that everything looked a bit more uniform. But it's about a 20-minute illustration. Some people would draw it straight in pen and therefore turn it into a 3 to 5 minute illustration. Other people want to be a bit more precise, and it could take an awful lot longer, depending on how much detail you put in. The final stage is to erase any visible pencil mark. The lighter you press with your pencil as you're drawing, the easier this is going to be. Again, I had to use a slightly darker, heavier pencil so that you could see my pencil lines, so they're not going to erase as well as I'd like them to. So what I'm going to do now is a very, very sped up colour of the page, just so that you can see what it looks like coloured. I'm going to use Copic markers, and then at the end of the video I'm going to have a bit of a surprise for you, so if you stick around till the end, then you may get something that'll work really well in conjunction with your new drawing journey. Okay, so that is the end of the colouring of this image. I hope you like it. I hope it's something that you would be interested in drawing. So what do I have for you? So as a kind of companion to this video, if you head over to my Patreon, follow me, but you don't have to be subscribed. There will be 2 pages there for you to have a look at. One is in regards to the flowers, a very brief how-to, and the second is slightly different flowers that you can, 1, have a look at to see how I draw them slightly different, 2, trace over, and 3, have a go yourself. The goal being that you can see how the basic 2 circles can offer a wealth of different types of flowers, tracing to help you with your muscle memory, and then eventually you will be more confident and will give them a go yourself. The links to all the items that I've used today will be in the description below, as will a link to my Patreon. As I said, you don't have to be subscribed to me in order to get the free pages, but if you follow me then you'll be notified when I upload new material. The other way to be notified of any new things that I post would be to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're not already. Click that notification bell to make sure you are informed when I upload something new, and if you've enjoyed the video or found it useful in any way, then give it a like and I will know that it's interesting enough to try and make some more of these videos. I appreciate your support and the fact that you've made it this far through the video. Thank you ever so much for being here. Thank you to all the people who support me by buying my books, by becoming subscribers on Patreon. You are very, very much appreciated. So for now, stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, stay sassy.